Today is February the 14th. If we have the chance for payback, should we take it? Let's find out together as we continue reading Joseph's story in Genesis. Today I would like you to read Genesis chapters 43 through 46. This continues the story of Joseph. Now, in the first several chapters that we read, Joseph went into Egypt. He has now become a key figure in Egypt. During 7 hard years of famine, Joseph has helped Egypt store up food for itself, and actually they help other nations as well. One of the other nations is Joseph's own brothers. They come to him not realizing who he is, and Joseph provides them with food. So in chapter 43, the food runs out. Jacob wants to send his sons, 10 of them, back to Egypt to get more food. Judah insists, if we go, we've got to take Benjamin. You read the story. Judah insists with his father that they need to take Benjamin, or the administrator of Pharaoh, whom they don't realize yet is Joseph, wouldn't even receive them. His father eventually relents, and you read the story. They go back in chapter 43. Joseph provides them with food, gives instructions that his silver cup be hidden in Benjamin's bag. Then he follows them, says, "One of you have stolen my cup." They, certain that no one had stolen it, said, if someone who has stolen your cup, we'll all return and be slaves. The man says, no, just the man who stole the cup will die. They look and they find the cup in Benjamin's sack. They go back to Egypt, and now Joseph says, Benjamin must stay here. Benjamin will be my slave for the rest of his life. Now, it's at that point that something very unusual happens. In chapter 44, verse 18, Judah stepped forward and said, "Please, my Lord, let your servant say just one word. Please don't be angry with me, even though you're as powerful as Pharaoh himself." Then Judah tells the story of their father, how their father had 2 sons. The oldest son is no more. Benjamin is the youngest son. Their father didn't want Benjamin to go with them because he loved him so much. Now, think of this. This is Judah who is saying these things, being one of the sons who is less loved than Benjamin. And yet at the very end of his speech to Joseph, in verse 33, "So please, my Lord, let me stay here as a slave instead of the boy. Let the boy return with his brothers. How can I return to my father if the boy is not with me? I couldn't bear to see the anguish this would cause my father." Now, Judah is the one who steps up and does this. If we look back through the book of Genesis at what Judah has done so far, Genesis chapter 37, in verse 26, it is Judah who says to his brothers after they have put Joseph in a pit, "What do we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Let's sell him instead." Judah has the idea to sell Joseph in slavery. Chapter 38, it is Judah who gives his oldest son to Tamar. His oldest son dies. His second son then takes Tamar to provide a seed, to provide a descendant for the name of his older brother. But he refuses to provide Tamar with a child, and as a result, he also dies. Judah then doesn't give Tamar to his third son. But we have this strange story of Judah visiting a prostitute who he doesn't know is Tamar, and she becomes pregnant with twins by her father-in-law Judah. In chapter 43, verse 8, it's Judah who says Joseph was serious when he warned us. And in verse 8, Judah said to his father, "Send the boy with me and we'll be on our way. Otherwise, we'll all die of starvation. Not only we, but you and our little ones. I personally guarantee his safety. You may hold me responsible if I don't bring him back to you. Let me bear the blame forever. If I hadn't wasted all this time, I could have gone and returned twice by now." Here's the issue. Judah is a leader, and Judah is not a nice guy. Judah is the one who wanted to sell Joseph. Judah is the one that got his daughter-in-law pregnant thinking she was a prostitute. He is not a good guy. But here in chapter 44, it's Judah who steps up and says, "Take my life for the boys." Now, perhaps because of that, Joseph probably would have heard Judah saying, "Sell Joseph into slavery." He remembers that. Joseph wouldn't known about Tamar, but I suspect that the kind of man Judah was already shone through his character. Joseph sees what's happened. He tells all of his servants to leave, and in chapter 45, verse 3, he says, "I'm Joseph. Is my father still alive?" And his brothers were speechless. They were stunned that Joseph was standing there in front of them. Well, he sends Benjamin back with his brothers, but he sends him back to collect his father, to bring him to Egypt so that Joseph could then care for him. In chapter 46, as Jacob prepares to go back to Egypt with his sons, God appears to him. Chapter 46, verse 3, the Lord says to him, "I'm God, the God of your father. Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I'll make your family into a great nation. I'll go with you down to Egypt, and I'll bring you back again. You'll die in Egypt, but Joseph will be with you to close your eyes." God appears to Jacob, reminds him of the covenant, and says, "This is all part of my plan." Now, we started with the question, if we have the chance for payback, should we take it? Joseph certainly had the chance, didn't he? But he chose not to take it. He chose instead to show incredible mercy and grace to his brothers. He provided for them and did it in a way that ultimately not only provided for their physical needs, but showed them honor and respect by allowing them to come back to Egypt and live in his household under his provision. A different area because the Egyptians didn't like shepherds, but still, they were protected by Joseph, and everybody knew it. Should we take the chance for payback when the opportunity's there? No. No. Instead, we should do what Christ has done for us. We should show mercy. Like, follow, and subscribe to this devotional on whatever platform you use to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll ask the question, do all things really work together for good?